I just trust that whatever I'm writing at the moment is the most exciting thing I should put out.
Welcome to Your Creative Mind. I'm Isolde Trachtenberg, and this podcast is all about using your innate creativity and mindfulness to build a life you love. Whether it's through writing, music, dance, theater, or any creative pursuit, we'll explore how to tap into your unique potential to transform your work, relationships, and daily life. Through inspiring conversations with world-changing artists, entrepreneurs, and innovators, or actionable insights in my solo episodes, you'll learn how to focus your energy, ignite your creativity, and bring more joy and purpose to everything you do. Hey there, and welcome to the Your Creative Mind podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm thrilled to welcome back a returning guest, Jaclyn Goldis. If you have not read her previous books, you should. They're fantastic. And she's here today to talk about her latest that's upcoming very, very shortly, The Safari. So I want to just ask you a question before we get started with all of this. What do you think it takes to leave behind a successful career, to pack your life into a backpack and build a whole new world, one gripping thriller at a time? That's what Jaclyn has done. She's a former estate planning lawyer turned globetrotting novelist. She crafts really suspense-filled, honestly, high-stakes stories that are going to keep you reading all night. I was just telling her before we started recording this chat that I keep having to go, oh, I have to get back to work, when instead I want to actually be reading her book. The Safari is going to drop you into a deadly luxury getaway in South Africa, where I've actually been, so that was super cool for me too, where the secrets run deeper than the savannah. In this episode, Jaclyn's going to share how she made the leap from law to storytelling, the art of crafting those unforgettable twists, and the surprising lessons that travel has taught her about writing. Whether you're a writer, a traveler, or someone who loves a good mystery, you're not going to want to miss this conversation. Jaclyn, thank you so much for coming back. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Isolda. Thank you for having me and for that gorgeous introduction.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I love your work. I love that it is so intimate, right? You don't write stories like Ludlum that are sort of told kind of from afar. You write stories that place me, especially when I'm reading your work, right in the thick of things. I feel like I'm a fly on the wall. I would love to just jump on in and talk to you about that. How do you, honestly, how do you do that? What is it that allows you to let the reader in so quickly and so intimately into the story you're telling?
Oh, thank you for that. Um, well, for you and I spoke a second before we got on here, and we were talking about how I write from all different perspectives, and I use first person. And when I think about it, first person does just come naturally to me, and I think it's my most natural way of telling stories.
Hmm.
And um, and I really like the multiple viewpoints, telling it from a bunch of different viewpoints. I think that's such a fun way to read a story and also to write a story. I remember it's making me remember when I wrote an early novel that never got published, and I'm so thrilled it didn't get published. But when I was in my early 20s, and I remember I think that was when like chick lit was very in, and it was this like
Mm.
very chatty way of writing. And I remember an agent who rejected the book giving me the feedback that it was like too chatty, too cutesy. And I think first person can go there if you let it. So
Mm.
especially writing a thriller, it's a fine line between like wanting to be close up to a person, but like hold things back as well. And I don't think I'm thinking about it consciously so much when I'm writing.
Mm.
Um, but it is, I think the challenge sometimes writing in first person is differentiating every voice. Um, but yeah.
That's so interesting to me. I want to say second fiction book, and no, actually, my first and second fiction book, I did this thing where I had the main character wrote in the first person, and everybody else had their chapter viewpoints, kind of like you do in the Safari, only they were in the third person. I didn't have quite the
Mm,
courage to go
yeah.
that entire route where everybody's intimate thoughts were there. And as I'm reading the Safari, I'm not finished with it yet, full disclosure, but as I'm reading it, I'm going, wow, you're getting to see when someone doesn't love the person who gets killed. You're getting those instances. And so you're kind of going, oh, and this is a possible suspect, and this is a possible suspect. And so I'm thrilled to with it, but I'm also nervous about it because you have a huge suspect pool in a story that doesn't have that many people in it. So I guess the question is, how do you differentiate for yourself what the ending is going to be? Do you let that come to you kind of organically, or is that something you know and are dropping these little breadcrumbs for us as the reader?
Yeah, I love that question because I'm always fascinated by authors' different processes. And for me, it's kind of impossible for me to fathom writing a book as complicated as a murder mystery or a thriller without knowing where I'm taking it. Like I'm really in awe of authors whose process is more pantsing because
Hmm.
I think that that's just I don't know. It's an amazing thing to imagine sitting down at the page and just not knowing where it's going to go and like letting my fingers fly off and take me there. But I don't know that I could do that myself. So I really do plot and plan in advance. I wouldn't say down to down to the detail. I'm not planning by chapters or anything, but it's like I have to know kind of the beats of the story I'm about to write,
Hmm.
and I have to know where I think I'm ending it. And usually I'm pretty right. I mean, for the safari, I knew definitely where I was taking it, and obviously no spoilers here. I did tweak a few things at the end to make the ending hit a bit differently when I was done, but I knew, but the last scene I imagined was the last scene. Like nothing really changed so much there.
Hmm.
Um, I I am in edits right now on my book that will come out next year, and for that one, the ending did change from what I imagined. So sometimes it does, but I would say I'm still imagining like the core beats of the story that I imagine typically wind up being in the final product as well. So I'm more of a planner.
I totally get it. And I wish that I could do that. When I write my books, I feel like I'm planning, I've got the plan down, and then my characters take the story like they take a left turn at Albuquerque and it goes
Yeah.
somewhere unexpected. So I almost feel like I'm playing catch up sometimes. Interestingly, though, when I write plays or screenplays, I know the last shot. I know the last right before curtains down or the right before lights out. I know exactly what that's going to look like. And that's what I'm writing towards. And again, sometimes it's pretty unexpected what happens in between, but I know where I'm going to. And like you, I can change it a little when
Right.
I'm there, when I'm at that endpoint and go, this doesn't actually work. So sometimes I feel like I leave stuff that's an almost story or an almost play. And I guess I'd love to know from you, do you have that? I think we all have stories that almost made it into or scenes that almost made it into the book but didn't. And
Mm.
do you have those in your back pocket? Like, what's an idea for a book or a storyline that you scrapped, but it still lingers in the back of your mind? Or are you one of those people who goes, I'm going to use it later, and then you do?
Oh, interesting. I don't know, for better or for worse, I generally tend to think that like whatever I'm fixated on now is the most exciting thing. Like I
Hmm.
feel like I'm evolving and growing as a writer, as a person. And so to me, like whatever idea I have now is the most exciting. I don't know that I'm like really revisiting old ideas that sort of fizzled out. I
Hmm.
think Liz Gilbert says like if you don't claim the idea, it can sort of I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but it can float back into the ether and like someone else takes it or it kind of goes away. So I think ideas I had in the past that I didn't accept then, none of them are really drawing me back to work on. I guess what that is to say, I think the ideas I have now are my most exciting, like my more current ideas are my most exciting ones to pursue. Who knows? Maybe that will change one day, but yeah, I don't really have the story that got away that I wish I had told. Um, I mean, I do think that there's like some fun ideas I had that I could have kept going with, but but I just keep getting new ideas that seem more exciting. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers it, but
No, it does because it's one of those things where I feel like sometimes stories haunt me. They go, you could be telling this story.
hmm
And I'm in the middle of something else and I kind of put it on the back burner and I've got a bunch of half finished, 60,000 words into this novel, that kind of thing.
hmm
And and I feel like I'm one of those people who it interests me while it interests me. And then when I'm done with it, kind of like with Aikido, I'm a martial artist and I got my first degree black belt. And then my interest in it sort of went, and I think you're done. And now I'm on to the next thing. And so I guess what I wonder from you, like you just said, you don't really have those. And I know Kevin Kelly says he's an idea guy. He's got thousands of them coming at him all the time. And he's happy when people take his ideas and run with them because he says, I'm never going to get to fulfill all of the ideas I have. So when other people take them, great, let's go. So when I look at your work, I think it's so it's it I this is I don't know how to say this other than to say it's interesting. Your work makes me very curious about how you process these things and what sparks them for you. You went from writing a story that was very much about sort of Soviet, life in the Soviet Union and immigration and all of that to this. And I guess I wonder, where did that come from? How did you go, this is what I'm going to write next?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things that go in it. I mean, one thing I'll say is I feel that I have a pretty close relationship with my intuition and I really trust my intuition and I trust, I don't know, I talk to my intuition a lot. I just I trust like where my I mean, I don't want to say impulses, but like I feel like there's like a book that's kind of waiting for me to write it and I just trust what it wants to be. And so I know that feeling, especially because now I've written I guess I can say many books, even not all of them have been published, but I've written a bunch of books. And so I know that feeling of like that click where this is something I want to spend, a year plus working on. And um yeah, and I would say that in terms of ideas, a lot of times they come, I wouldn't say they spark from setting, but they like come in conjunction with setting. Because I love, like you said, I've loved traveling a lot and I live abroad. And so um, setting and place really inspire my books. And so for the safari, certainly my time in South Africa and on safari, I was there, it was like 10 years ago now, but I knew when I was there, oh, I will definitely set a book here. I didn't know what
Mm,
kind of book. And yeah, when I started thinking about where I wanted to set my next book and once I really do one book at a time. I mean, I can edit a book at the same time as I'm thinking about and maybe writing a new one, but I can't like plan a book and write a different book at the same time. That doesn't work. So when I have the space, mental space to start working on a new book, I think about setting. And yeah, South Africa came to me. And then for this book, a lot of I love Real Housewives, I'm not ashamed to say. And I love Bravo. And, there's a lot of storylines of women married to younger men. And obviously that's been done in the reverse so many times in the thriller space that I thought, oh, it'd be really fun to do an older woman marrying a younger man kind of storyline. And it kind of synced up with the time that I was feeling inspired to write a South Africa book. And, as they do, those kind of things melded and became this, book that I didn't, necessarily imagine and took on a life of its own. And yeah.
it's so interesting. And because I've been to South Africa, there's a scene early in the book where you say, where they first arrive and they have amarula in little glasses for everybody. And
Yeah.
I was going, I remember amarula. It's so
Oh,
tasty. And I was there before you could get amarula outside of South Africa. So I brought two bottles home on the plane. So I
oh,
guess,
wow. I
yeah, it
love
was
that.
many, many moons. It was 1999. It was many, many moons ago that I was there. But it's so interesting to me that there are so many touches that you have that because I was there feels so authentic. And this whole world is very high stakes. It's wealthy people, there are lots of secrets, there's murder, there's high fashion. in this research that you did, also in the setting, but also with the characters and the actual storyline, did you ever have a moment while researching either this book or any other when the reality felt more unbelievable than the fiction you were writing?
Mm, I love that. Yes, I think reality often is more unbelievable. I think a lot of times things happen and I'm like, wow, if I wrote that, no one would believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, but I think, as you alluded to, I had to do a lot of research for this book, and I, especially in the safari realm, in terms of like, what is it like with the animals? What are potential? Because I knew I wanted to use the animals, and this isn't a spoiler, but like in order to help me facilitate the murders, because it's like as a, murder mystery writer, you're always thinking about murders that happen in unique ways. And so yeah, I spoke to such generous people, some guides, a bunch of South Africans. And certainly one of the guides who's just incredible, and has written a bunch of books himself. Yeah, some of the stories he told me were just kind of so wild,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they were fun to like pick apart and then I used different pieces and different bits and spun them out into my own plot. But um, yeah. So yes, I think sometimes things are um, too unbelievable almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember we went on photo safari when we were in South Africa, and our guide took us into this area where there were a couple of prides of lions, and the lions, the males, were sort of sunning themselves and being lazy. The females, on the other hand, we pulled into this little nook, I guess, where the only way out was to back out, and the lionesses just started circling our little minivan, just circling it and circling it and circling it, and we're all like, hmm. And the guide said, don't stick any part of yourself out. They might look like they're just wandering around. They are very fast.
Oh,
Don't, he said, we lose at least 5 tourists a year, even though they're being fed. This was an enclosed safari. So it wasn't like they should have been particularly hungry. He's like, they like hunting. Don't mess with them. And one
right.
of the lionesses, she lay down behind our car, behind our little minivan. She just lay there. And we're all freaking out. And the guide's like, nope, she'll move. Trust me. And he revved the engine, and eventually she gave us a disgusted look and she left, but it was only after she was like, oh, tourists. So it was really interesting to me to be in that moment to realize I'm fragile.
Yeah.
And in the book, I feel a little bit like there are all of these moments where the characters get to that place where they all have to, in some ways, deal with their own mortality. And I'm wondering for you, sort of going back, this is a strange kind of question because you're writing the books you're writing and they're great books. But was there ever a time when you were thinking about the kind of writer you were going to be that you went, I'm not sure this is it for me, or these are the stories I want to tell no matter what? And you sort of plowed in. What was the arc of that for you?
Mm. Yeah. Well, when I first was writing, I wrote my first book when I was 17, and then I wrote two books in my 20s, when I was in law school and when I was working as a lawyer. And the books in my 20s were, like I said, chick lit, kind of romance, like adjacent. And and then I wrote a book when I left my job as a lawyer, and I traveled the world for a year out of a carry-on backpack, and I wrote my first book, and that was my first one that was published, um, called When We Were Young. And I wrote it as women's fiction, like pretty straight contemporary women's fiction with a historical timeline. And I had been reading at that time, I mean, I was reading a ton of women's fiction, and chick lit was sort of out. And and so and then when I sold the book, my editor wanted me to expand the historical timeline and make it more historical fiction. And I was willing to do that. And I thought it was really great advice, or a great revision for the sake of the story. But when I finished that book and published it, and they asked me kind of what I was considering next in the historical fiction realm, I wasn't enthused to write historical fiction.
Hmm.
Um, and so I knew that wasn't pulling me. And even though they were interested in that, for me, it just I don't know. I just knew that wasn't my path. So I wrote two more women's fiction books, contemporary women's fiction. And we were about to, it was the pandemic, and I actually wrote them, I think, before my When We Were Young came out. And so when we went to go sell them, once we decided I wasn't doing historical and we went to go sell them, by that time it had been, I don't know, so much time had passed because but from the time you sell a book to when it comes out is so long and yada yada, and it was COVID. And so I had this extra time. And I was like, I think I'm gonna, while I'm just like twiddling my thumbs a little bit, I think I'm gonna write a crime novel because I sort of looked around at all the books I was reading, and they had somehow and at some point just segged all into mysteries.
Mm,
And that always seemed like intimidating for me to write. And I didn't know if I could, but it kind of felt low stakes, like we were going to go out with my other books. So like, let me just, if this doesn't work, whatever. So I wrote the book that then became The Chateau, which is my first thriller that came out. And I loved it. Like that experience was just so fun. I had so much more fun writing that than I think ever had writing anything else. And it just clicked for me. And yeah, it was very clear to me that I don't want to write anything but crime. So we never even tried to sell those other two contemporary fiction books that I wrote, which
hmm.
I genuinely think are great. I'm really proud of them. I think they could have sold, but it's kind of like what I said earlier. I just trust that whatever I'm writing at the moment is the most exciting thing I should put out. And I don't, and I feel like I have so many books in me that maybe I'll sell those one day, maybe I won't. At the moment, I can't imagine not wanting to write crime. Like this feels really like my happy place as a writer. So it's been an interesting journey, and I feel grateful for all. At the time I was so annoyed that it was taking us years to sell these other books, and I thought it was a delay for me. And it really turned out to be such a blessing because I don't know that I would have tried crime if I had maybe sold a couple book deal for contemporary women's fiction. So it is funny how things work out.
And it is funny, and it leads me perfectly into the next question I wanted to ask you. And this is another, it's kind of a silly question, but as part of your evolution as an author, I think it's fascinating. If you could sort of time travel back and tell pre-law school Jaclyn something about the life that you've built now, what would you say to her?
Oh, wow. I would tell her that everything you've wanted is going to happen, and it's going to happen in a crazily different way than you expect. And and to just like keep going, keep believing you're on the right track even when it feels like you're totally off track. And and that yeah, and I would say just like enjoy the moments instead of like wishing for the thing. Um
Mm.
but but yeah, I don't know. No regrets. Like I really it's been a circuitous path, but I really think everything brings you to exactly where you're supposed to be. And really, I got a lot out of my legal career that informs my writing to this day, and that really made me a better writer and gave me a lot of inspiration. And so, in a funny way, it feels like, yeah, that was meant to feed me into this, even.
Okay, so that begs the question, how did your law career infuse and inform and support your writing career?
I think in a few ways. First of all, I worked with just phenomenal and brilliant people. And the type of law I practice, I guess most types of law, to be honest, is very heavy on writing and drafting.
Mm,
And not only contracts and that kind of thing, but also letters and to clients that are very lengthy and explanatory. And I remember the first ones I did up until I left, honestly. One of the men I worked for, who was just so smart and generous and wonderful, would just tear my stuff apart. And it was such a learning experience for me as to writing concisely, writing powerfully. I can't imagine that I would have gotten more out of an MFA than you know, from my boss. So I learned so much that made me a better writer. And then
mm,
also, I would say in a very funny way, I was an estate planning lawyer, and so that's um, helping people dispose of their assets on their death in a way that's tax efficient and also that accomplishes their desires in terms of leaving it to their family, to charitable trust or just charitable endeavors, that kind of thing. And if funny enough, when you write murder mysteries, a lot of times someone's will and trust comes into play because people often kill for money. And so, I've written several books where, including The Safari, where a will is discussed and where it plays a pivotal role, or at least a role in the murder. And so, like, probably I would have to talk to a lawyer, who had specialized in estate planning for each of these books, but instead I just know it. So that's fun to be able to pull that out and also to even use it because I know such intricacies to be able to use it in my murder mysteries. I'm writing a project now that I'm using it in a really like original way that I don't know that I would have actually known to use it in that way if I hadn't, been a lawyer practicing it. So anyway, that's kind of a fun bonus that would never have expected when I chose that practice area.
Yeah, that is interesting to me because uh I mean, like criminal law, if you'd been practicing criminal law, I would imagine they would be sort of more urban crime novels that you might have been inspired to write. But this is what
Right.
you're doing is sort of deeper than that. And it's something that I've been thinking about. Your novels often have pretty glamorous settings and lots of powerful people. They have, most of the time you have at least some pretty wealthy characters. You have luxury. They all have some pretty big secrets. And it's something that I wonder because we see it in TV as well as literature and movies also that privilege and power are often really compelling ingredients for suspense. And I'm wondering, what do you think makes those two characteristics so compelling for writing suspense or thriller novels?
Wow, I totally agree. And actually, it's the thing I forgot to say about my legal career is that I worked at a very big law firm with billionaire clients, and so that was another part that was so fun to be a fly on the wall of these incredibly wealthy people and their fascinating businesses and their fascinating family situations. And, obviously you can imagine the drama and the soap opera-ness and also sometimes the unhappiness of people have such astounding wealth and
Hmm.
children. And so yeah, I definitely draw on those experiences also, and because I think it is so fun to write, the White Lotus-y kind of characters.
Hmm.
Um, and in terms of what makes privilege and power so compelling, I mean, I think that we sometimes love to hate the, rich and
Hmm.
powerful.
Hmm.
And we wonder, what's behind the facade and the Instagram filters and, what their life is really like. And obviously we know it's not just rainbows and sunshine. And so to peel back those layers is so fun as a writer. Yeah. So,
It is interesting, isn't it? There is that love-hate relationship. Hang on one
yes.
second. Where am I? I can't find you. You have disappeared. There you are. That was so weird. I couldn't
Oh,
find the Zoom and I'm going, am I still recording? Am I on mute? Because
oh,
I currently have a cat who is desperate to be loved, jumping all over me and
aw.
his tail is hitting the microphone. And so I thought, oh, I'll mute things so that that won't be an issue, but he will not be silenced. It
Oh,
is the way
well,
it is. Um, but yeah, it is interesting to me that notion. Like I remember the Sidney Sheldon stuff that was in the 70s. They were and the TV show Heart to Heart. And so many of they were either wealthy detectives or like the Thin Man books and movies and Heart to Heart and various other things. Or they're the people who either we love to hate or they have time for those deadly mysteries because they are so wealthy and so powerful. So
right.
we live in this interesting world where, uh, like you said, there's a love-hate relationship with them. And sometimes someone who is profoundly wealthy, but also is evil, getting their comeuppance makes us feel like, okay, I can safely read this because the evil person was the one that got killed and now somebody else has to figure out what happened. This is not to say that's what's happening in your book, but it is interesting to me, sort of there's a psychology at work there. And that kind of makes me wonder with you. and the books that you're writing, how much do you look at human behavior and human psychology as you craft the stories you're crafting?
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated by psychology and I've studied a lot myself and in the self-development work and I world and I've done a lot of work personally like in that world in terms of coaching and breath work and meditation and all that stuff is fascinating to me and how why and how humans operate is just so interesting to me. And I think
Mm,
also thinking about, rich characters, which not all of my characters are, but some of them surely are, and or many of them are. And I think it's really interesting to like I always hope that by the end, if I've done my job right, none of them are black and white. Um, like I don't I would never want to be writing characters who are wealthy and awful because that's not, everyone has their shades of gray. And
sure.
so I think it's really interesting to find those even in my sociopaths, because obviously I write murder mysteries. And so I do have to have those like sociopaths or horrible people who commit crimes
Mm,
and so that's like a necessary ingredient to a murder mystery. I think that sometimes I don't read my Goodreads reviews or anything like that, but I know that sometimes I'll get feedback of like the characters aren't likable or whatever, and I think you're just in a crime novel necessity by necessity it's different from a rom-com because I need to for each character to have a motive to murder and I need so they
right.
have to be having secrets. They all have to have some uh, some things they're trying to hide and but I think as humans we all are to some
Hmm.
degree.
Hmm.
Probably not to the extent, hopefully not to the extent that some of my characters are, um, but I think that it's really fun to explore and to like to tease out the good and the bad. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me. What you're saying makes so much sense. There is, uh, I don't know if you know the work of the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, but
Yes.
I
She's
love her so much.
me
In her
too.
book When Things Fall Apart, she wrote the one definition of hopelessness, the Buddhist definition of hopelessness that I can get behind. And she says that hopelessness is the release of all hope for an alternative to the present moment. And I sometimes feel like that sentence just is the way I move through world. It's like, wait, I'm trying to be here now.
Yeah.
And when we're in that moment in a story where someone either acts completely out of character or maybe it was in their character all along, but they release all hope for an alternative to the present moment. And on some level, if you're about to commit a crime, you don't feel like there's any alternative to the
Yeah.
path you've chosen.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about that facet of it? I know we're all of a sudden talking about Buddhism, but there's something so fascinating to me about writing stories where sometimes the characters feel compelled because they don't feel like they have an alternative to do something that if they felt like they had an alternative, they would never do.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think at some level that every human being on the face of the earth in a certain circumstance with a certain set of facts and scenarios could be pushed to the brink of doing something completely horrible. I
Hmm.
think that um we don't always know what we would do in these horrible circumstances or
Right.
these pushed to the brink circumstances. And my job as a crime writer is to push my characters to that brink that we might not always experience as humans, but maybe some of us have experienced. And so, yeah, I think it's, sorry, now I'm forgetting the question.
Oh, that's
But
okay. I'm just wondering about the psychology of writing stories and characters who, in that moment, feel like they have no alternative but to do this thing that other people in other circumstances might think is awful or wicked or whatever. That in that moment, sometimes they feel like they don't have any other path forward.
yeah, and I think if I've done my job right, then, you might hate the villain, but there's like a part of you, I hope, that will sympathize with the villain a bit or see how desperate the villain was or unless it's a sociopath character and then maybe you won't But I think that that's like the important piece of you don't, it's like, I mean, unless you're a serial killer, which I don't really write serial killer books, then you're not just like going out and murdering someone random just for the kicks of it. Like you have intrinsic motivation
Hmm.
and and I think that's my job as a writer to make sure you see that and feel that.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you. For example, the villain that I always go to as my most hated villain, not because he's a well-rounded villain, but because he's so two-dimensional, is in the movie Titanic. Billy Zane's character is
Oh,
just ugh, right? To me,
yeah.
he grabs the baby out of the woman's hand so that he can get on a lifeboat. I mean,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
practically twirls his mustache throughout that entire movie.
Yes.
You just know that. And so it feels to me like there's nothing redeeming. And and I'm happy to dislike him. And
Yes.
something that you talked earlier about, you said, that love-hate relationship that we love to hate them, or sometimes we even hate to love them, the people who end up being the villains. So when you're writing that, your villains, your guilty party will say almost never feels to me in the books that I've read of yours, they never feel to me like they are the mustachio twirling villain. Like there are reasons for them to do what they do, but we don't know that to begin with, right? So when you're beginning your novels, when you're beginning these thrillers, these mysteries, and you said that you plotted out pretty well, how do you come up with the humanizing factors for these villains so that they, like you said, you need lots of people with motivation to kill the people who die, who are murdered. But how do you come up with the humanizing factors of someone who's going to psychologically and actively be capable of murder?
Yeah, I love that. I think that my process, for better or for worse, is a bit mystical. Like it's not formulaic in terms of like I do this character chart and like I figure out it's more like feeling into the character because I really do feel like my books are and my characters are trying to tell me what they want to be. And so
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say like I would say figuring out someone's a villain is like goes hand in hand with figuring out just who my characters are. And um so it's not like I'm like, oh, this is the villain. Now I need to figure out. It's like this person starts to take shape and I start to realize what the story is. And I don't always know the villain from the start of because I think the months I spend planning a book are maybe similar to like someone else writing a first draft and seeing where the book takes them because I like
Mm-hmm.
am, with my notebook, scratching things around, playing things around, like trying to imagine like who the characters are that are populating the story and what's happening. And so so I think figuring out the villain goes, I've already kind of developed this character that I care about in some way. So I think the shades of gray and the quote unquote good and bad of a character kind of develop together. And yeah, so it's not like it's sometimes it is a bit of save the cat of like you want to make, you know, like the person who saves the cat who looks great to the readers. Like sometimes you do want to add a few moments, and I do sometimes add that like unorganically, but a lot of times somehow organically, because if someone's, say, a parent and you show us, you like can see that they're really, a good mother, but they have these other deficiencies. Like, so then I don't know, a complex character starts to develop, even if it's your villain.
And I would hope so because again, mustachio twirling villains are boring. Just
Yeah.
like to me, Superman is boring a little bit because they call him the Big Blue Boy Scout because he doesn't do anything wrong. And what's interesting to me about that, I'm talking about movies all of a sudden, but in one of them, and I forget which one, lots of people complain that Superman would never do anything wrong, and he ends up being kind of responsible for a bunch of deaths and then has to carry that. And for me, that was a beautiful moment in the arc of Superman because he's kind of human then. And
Yeah.
so what I feel a little bit in reading your work is that again that humanity is there even if the person's a bad guy, whoever the person is, even if it's the villain, there's a humanity there and I love that. And I guess I'm wondering from you, even though I'm talking about movies, I'm going to keep sort of refocusing back on books. You've talked about books being a real source of joy throughout your whole life. And what I'm wondering is, are those characters, where do you find them in the books that you love? And if you can sort of detail, I guess, or think of one, what's a book that's changed you as a writer? And how does that influence what you give to your own readers?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, what is a book that's changed me as a writer? Um, I mean, off the top of my head, I can say I'm really inspired by Daniel Silva, who writes these kind of thriller type books with this Israeli Mossad agent and who's gallivanting across the world solving very twisty um I don't want to say mysteries, but like saving the world in very
Yeah.
twisty ways. Um, and I'm trying to think how he's made a mark on my writing career because I don't write the action type thrillers that he writes, but I just think he writes at such a high level of there's such mastery in his writing and how he hooks a reader. And it's just so, I mean, I can't put his books down, and it's just so fun to read books like that. And so um, he's been super inspirational to me. And I'm sorry again, now I forgot the first part of your question.
Oh, that's okay. I know you and I, when we talk, we sort of go off on all of these amazing
Totally.
tangents. No, what I was asking about was this notion of when we're writing and when we're reading these books, uh, something in us changes based on the books we've loved. And I was just wondering what of the books that you've read has impacted you, has affected you as a writer. And you said Daniel Silva's book, and I think you've mentioned him before in previous chats you and I've had.
Yeah.
See, to me, the stuff that you write isn't high action in the they're gonna jump and fight and jump out of planes and things, but there is a tautness to what you're writing that I really love. And it starts pretty quickly. Like you don't waste a lot of time meandering like some other writers that I've read do. And so that's sort of what I was asking about is like what has sort of changed you as a writer from the reading that you've done? And I think you
Yeah.
answered it. So
I'll say,
don't
I'll
worry.
say, I'll say one other thing is that a writer I really admire recently is Jessie Sutanto. She writes this new series called Vera Wong. Um, God, I don't remember it's a kind of long name for her first book, and her second one's about to come out. Um, and it's like sort of a cozy mystery set in San Francisco with a woman who owns a tea shop, and there's finds a dead body, and then it's kind of how she has this found family of, and trying to solve the mystery on her own. And it's hilarious and it's so big-hearted. And I think something I really take from that, like I love a good happy murder mystery.
Hmm.
Um, I like to think, I write dark mysteries, but that there is something happy about them. Like I'm not one to go into the creepy murder mystery realm. And so I think from Jessie Sutanto, it's like how much we love her characters, like how I think she's like just a genius at writing characters that we love and that we're rooting for. And yeah, so I definitely have taken away inspiration from that as well.
I think it's so important to have characters that people root for. The like you and I talked about right before we started recording this chat, the murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is one of my favorite Agatha Christie's.
Mine too.
And in that way, you're thinking the country doctor, first person, and then all of a sudden, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, the country doctor is actually the murderer.
Totally.
And yeah, and so what's interesting to me is that, the book starts out with him saying that he was called in to a murder scene and he has to go and he has to, he figures out the person was murdered, blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing happens in this little village in England. And of course, he's actually the murderer. The country doctor is actually the murderer. And you don't know that, of course. And he doesn't tell you that until the very end. So I love that facet of it that is so unexpected because the very first line is something like, I was called down to Roger Ackroyd's at 3 o'clock in the morning. And off we go. But it turns out he, of course, had just been there previously to murder the
Yeah,
guy.
yes,
So, so
so good.
the way we begin the way we begin a story, the way we start it, can lead us on a merry chase like Agatha Christie did. It can lead us into loving characters like you're just talking about. And so I guess I wonder with your opening lines, opening lines can really hook a reader, it can lose them. I'd love to know what your philosophy is on crafting your opening line, your first sentence, and if you have favorite ones. Like for me, one of my favorite opening lines is 1984, and it was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13.
Oof.
Immediately something is off in this world, right? You don't know what it is
Yes.
yet, but something's off. So I'd love to hear from you about the way you craft your first lines. And maybe you don't. Maybe you start. I often start with the second paragraph of a story because it's too intimidating to write the first one. But how do you do it? And what are some of your favorites if you have any?
Oof, such a good question. I don't know that I have the best answer because I think that so much of the writing process in terms of the plotting and the writing is just intuitive to me. Like I'm not someone who really intellectualizes the process,
Mhm.
for better or for worse. Like I'm not analyze. I mean, am of course like scrutinizing my first paragraphs and first lines and first chapters and being like, did I start in the right place and whatever. But I think I have now like a instinct for story, and I usually I would have to say that the first lines of my thrillers, I don't think they've much changed from draft to final from first draft to final copy. I'm trying to think if they have. I don't think so. I
Mm.
think that they really just came to me and I went with it and it felt like them just you know what? I think once I figure out where I'm starting the story, like it's like when you're done with a book and you're looking back, there was only one place that story could ever start.
Mm.
And sometimes you don't get it on the first go around, but I think I have figured it out for at least my thrillers, not for maybe my earlier books, but so yeah, I don't know. It wasn't the first line of the safari just came to me and it felt like where I had to start it. I would say my favorite first line of a book that I've written, I think is my book coming out next year, so I can't spoil that, but that has yeah, my favorite first line. Um and in terms of a book I've read, God, I'm like now my mind is completely blank. I have no answer for you. I mean,
That
I have a horrible memory. I'm really bad at remembering um things, so nothing's coming to me right now.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, that's the thing is sometimes you don't know it until you see it again. When I
Yeah,
go back and reread books, I'm like, oh yeah, I love this. I love this
yeah,
book. I reread Zilpha Keatley Snyder's The Velvet Room once every few years. I reread Lois Dine. These are children, they're middle
yeah,
grade books, but I go back and I reread them because they held something for me. And
yeah,
I forget the details, but that's okay because they are fast reads and I'll reread them again. Down a Dark Hall by Lois Duncan, The Velvet Room. Many of these books they're indelibly imprinted on me, but at the same
yeah.
time, I it's okay if I forget details because I'll go back and do it again. And so I guess I'm wondering, you're mentioning that I love that your favorite. It's almost like my favorite first line is the next book I'm writing. It's
Yeah.
not, which I
I mean,
love.
I don't want to knock the safari. I love the first line. I love like the first chapter of this book, but
Mhm.
yeah.
No, but I
Um,
think I think it's great. You don't tend to, you said yourself earlier, you don't tend to look back that much.
right.
You're present and looking forward, which is again very Buddhist of you, which I love. But it does feel a little bit like when I'm reading the book that it's very present. Things are not in the past. It's very present. It's what's going on right now. And so I guess, and I keep saying that, I guess I'm wondering because each thing you're saying, I'm like, ooh, okay. So you said you have a terrible memory. Does that play into writing in the present tense for you?
Hmm. Um, I don't know that having a bad memory does. I like writing in the present tense. It just feels so immediate. There's something that feels more alive to me about writing in the present tense.
Hmm.
Um, and even there's a book that I can't really see anything about, but that I'm working on, and that is my first thriller. I'm like writing in third person, which is
Hmm.
interesting for me. So that's been an interesting switch, but I'm still writing it in present tense, so I haven't changed that. I think my last thriller actually for there was one POV character that I wrote in third person past, and that really worked for that
Hmm.
character in that book. So I do sometimes like um, you know, delve out of that for reason for when it serves the book, but I think generally I find present tense to be very immediate and almost like your heart is in your throat a little bit because you're like especially for suspense where you want to cultivate that level of suspense. Like I think in a rom-com or something else, maybe it doesn't matter as much.
Hmm.
Um, but I like crime in first person. I mean, sorry, in present tense.
Yeah, and I get it, and it is again, it's intimate and it's immediate, which I love. And and I'm like I'm going to be reading this Safari over lunch as soon as you and I stop chatting about it. So, because
Aw.
I'm literally in the middle of it right now. Uh, and I've been super busy, so I haven't had a chance. But we were talking about movies and TV a little bit. Talk to me about that part of it. This is something that I do, and maybe you do it as well, or maybe it's just all in your imagination. One of the things that I do when I'm creating characters is I will find a person, usually some sort of an actor or celebrity, who epitomizes the character for me, and I'll put their picture up so that I know that this person is 6'2" and they have green eyes and blonde hair and blah blah blah. And if I ever need to remember which characters, which that's what I do. So I guess I'm wondering if any of your books were to become films or maybe even a TV series. Now, and I don't know if they are. Maybe you're negotiating deals right now. I have no idea. But if they were, if you could cast any actor to be the lead in any one of your books, who would you cast and which book?
Ooh, such a good question. Well, actually, I can say, I can't really give details, but I can say that my first thriller, The Chateau, is in development for a series. So that's been super exciting.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yes, thank you. Yeah, it's so funny, like how these things work and how you can't really say anything
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
at a certain stage and things take a very long time, but it's really exciting. Um, in terms of casting, um, I know a lot of people are like you, a lot of writers are like you in that they have a lot of are looking like towards celebrities and towards like thinking more concretely about what their characters would look like. And I less do that. Actually, I don't do it at all, really. Like I feel like I have a feeling about the character in my body. It's like
Mm-hmm,
funny. And so I can like feel them, but I'm not, and I obviously know the general idea of what they look like, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's really weird for me to like put a celebrity to put an actor to a character. I'm trying to think if I have a specific point of view um about anyone. I'm also really bad at knowing a lot of the newer actors' names. Like I know the ones that were like in the 90s. Like I don't know
Right.
that I know, even though I'm very into pop culture, but I don't know a lot of the younger actors. It's wow, it's like such a funny question that's so hard for me to answer, especially because one of my projects um is in development, but
Uh,
I'm gonna have to come back to you on this. I don't know.
We'll do an addendum after you've had some time to think about the interview for the next book. We'll chat about
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
totally.
it is interesting. Like I have for example in my Fairy Godmother Diaries, which is not mystery, uh Amelia Clark was the woman who I would have loved to play the fairy godmother, who she also happens to play the piano, and my main character is a pianist. And Mila Kunis is the woman I would love to play my main character in my tarot card thrillers because she is
Mhm.
she is from that part of the world, just like my character's family's from that part of the world. So it's really interesting to me how easy it is. And yet the cover of the book is an actress who is a friend of mine who we met when she was a New York actor, but now she's down in the Atlanta, Florida area. And it's so interesting to see how these things go where you didn't expect it to go this way and then it does.
Oh,
And
I love these answers. Wait, okay, you reminded me. Now I have answers. Okay,
perfect.
Mila Kunis, actually is one of the ones I would love to play. So I have like a bunch of 40-year-old women in the Chateau, my book that's in development. So I could definitely imagine her like as one of those. I actually think I even um yeah, I maybe said, like told my agent just that would be so fun, but who knows. Um, but um, but then also for my book that came out last year, the main character, I think Kathy Bates would be so amazing as
Oh,
Ginevra, like the mysterious author character in that
mm-hmm.
book. So I mean, there's a lot of it, like there's a lot of people I would be happy, I'd be thrilled with, but those are two that just came to mind.
Oh, yay. Yeah. Mila Kunis is amazing. I think she's great in everything she does. So, which is one of the reasons I chose her as my dream cast, although now it's Miranda Roldan who would be in my dream cast if they
Wait, the
ever.
tarot card murder mystery. Oh my God, I need to read that. Wow, I didn't know
Oh,
that you have that. That sounds amazing.
yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's gonna eventually be a 4 book series, and the first one is about the sword suit, which is Die by the Sword. And I'm in the middle of writing The Poisoned Cup, so it's all about the suits. And the main character is a professional tarot card reader who works with the police to solve crimes. And normally it's she finds kidnapped people, but it ends up that she, in this case, has to delve deeper into the crimes that are being committed. So it was a lot of fun for me to write, and I'm having a great time writing book two. So
That is
yes.
so cool. I have to tell you, like, as maybe an aside, but I have this, I love tarot card readings, and I actually have a tarot card reader I regularly chat with. But then she referred me to her friend who does the coolest thing, who does tarot card readings for writers.
Oh,
And
very cool.
she helps you when you're doing a book, and she can like feel into your characters, and you can ask her like it's almost like a brainstorm session with someone
Hmm.
who like is using tarot cards to like help guide your brainstorming. And it's been, I used it for the last book I wrote. I had like a
Hmm.
few sessions with her, and it was really wildly awesome. So I love all things tarot. So I'm gonna have to read your
Oh,
book.
yay. Yeah, that well, and I do the same thing for writers and various creatives and
Do you?
business
That's
people
so
also. Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Wow, I
And
love that.
thank you. Yeah. And it's fun because my big COVID project, I wrote the book, but also I created my own tarot deck in order to have
Wow,
the book have the right cards on the cover. I went, you know what? I'm going to create my own tarot deck. So
that is so cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun and I love it. And when I do professional card readings like at corporate events and various other
Ah,
places, I read once at the White House in during the Obama
oh
administration's
my
one of their Halloween
God,
parties, not
that
like
is
to make public
cool.
policy decisions or anything, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. And
Wow.
so I was like, I need my own deck so that I can use the cards whichever way I want. And so the functional tarot deck was born,
God, I
and I
need to
wrote
buy
an
your deck.
accompanying book.
That is cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay, I know
thank
what
you.
I'm doing when I'm back in the US. I'm gonna have to buy your
Yeah, yeah,
deck.
the book, it's really, and it's just so much fun because one of the things I did that has no one has ever done is I took all the symbols and all the cards and I related the symbols from the cards to one another so you can see related cards based on the symbols that are in each
Oh,
card.
that is cool.
Yeah, no one, to my knowledge, has ever done that before. And in the book that accompanies the deck, that's what I did. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I love doing that because in the case of the books that I'm writing, that's a big part of what carries through the whole series of 4 books. So there's a lot of stuff. But
That is
anyway,
awesome. Wow, that is so cool.
thank you. But we're supposed to be talking about you, so let's get back to you. I guess the thing you've said a couple times, and thank you very much for your kind words. That we're talking about some good questions, and I guess the next question and the penultimate question that I'm going to ask you is this: You've done lots of interviews, you've done lots of discussing about your books. What's the one question you wish someone would ask you, but they never do? And what's your answer?
Hmm. Um, you know, I teach some workshops and for writers, and I'm eventually going to create a course because I think that what's missing among conversations with writers is some of the mindset piece. Like I think writers can sometimes have like more of a lack mindset and also a mindset of like what does the market want? What does my agent want? What does my editor want? And so I almost think the question that is most fun for me to even maybe answer is like, how do I have more fun as a writer? Because I
Mm,
just think that that's what creatives and writers need to be thinking about more. And I guess in answer to that, I would say just follow what you're curious about and, find something to write that's going to light you up and that is going to light you up the most and trust yourself, like
mm,
trust a character that comes to you, trust a plot that comes to you, trust a genre, whether it's new or something kind of that you're scared to attempt, just like trust those impulses and let fun guide you more than anything.
mm.
Um yeah, that's what comes to me.
Oh, that's fabulous. I love that so much because I sometimes think that we as writers go into this deep, dark hole and
Hmm.
think in that space of, oh, I can't write it. I don't know it. I am not going to be good at it. And it's hard once you start down that path, it's really hard to sort of climb your way out and go, no, 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 this is something that I can do. Because to me, and this is what I say when I do my own writing workshops, is that we're all naturally born storytellers from the very first time that you made an excuse for why you were late coming home when you were 6 years old,
Yeah,
you were
absolutely.
telling stories. So it's innate, and yet we tend to lose that and forget that we know how to do it. So,
Exactly. I was just visiting my parents and I was visiting them in Florida. My dad loves to golf and we were talking about his golf swing and he's like always like, trying to figure out his golf swing and perfect it, whatever. And I was saying to him that I had just taken a tennis lesson that morning and I love tennis. Like it's the one sport I loved growing up. I wouldn't say I'm great at it. I hadn't played it in years, but I just took a lesson. And the whole time I was just thinking, like anytime I started getting in my head about my swing or like if I missed something, I just kept saying fun and easy. This is fun and easy. It's fun and easy. It's fun and easy. And really, I played amazing. Like I was really impressed with
awesome.
myself and whatever. But I was saying that to him of like sometimes it's not perfecting the swing, like thinking about this new thing that you have to do to like make it perfect. It's just like going out there and being like, oh, it's just fun and easy, and I'm just gonna play and it's fun and easy. And I think writing can be the same. People get so obsessed with like the mental part of it and like unpacking it and that and really like you can just go and have this like fun and easy quote unquote experience like you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's interesting because I was just taking a workshop on singing last week. It was a 3-day workshop on the neuroscience of singing, and it was really fascinating.
Wow,
Yeah,
fascinating.
it was really cool. But what was interesting to me is we were told all of these different sort of brain techniques to do what we were going to do. And there was a point at which I kind of went, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna do all of the different techniques that they've just told me to apply. I'm just going to do the thing he's asking us to physically do. And that was the one everybody said, oh, that was amazing. That was so much better.
Mhm.
And it was because I wasn't really trying, I was being. And
Wow,
that's a
I love that.
huge thing for me. I
Totally.
tend to over intellectualize things. So anytime I can get out of my
Yes.
head is a beautiful thing. So,
Yes. I
well,
agree with that. I think so much of like creative, and I'm not knocking them. I think that there's so much value in learning the craft and
mm-hmm,
um, the plotting and whatever. But I think so much of it is like we're not trying too hard, but we're putting too many rules on ourselves, and
mm-hmm,
it's like weighing it down and making something that doesn't need to be heavy, heavy. And I think
right.
if we like take off that weight, that there's more lightness sometimes.
And there's more flow. And for
Yeah.
me, that's when I find I create the best, whether it's
Yeah.
music or writing, anything, when I'm allowing myself to sort of be on the river, if you will, that makes it so much easier to create whatever it is I'm trying to create. Because then even if there is a boulder in the middle of the river, I get to flow around it instead of bashing up against it. And there's something very powerful to me about that part of it.
100%. Definitely.
Ah, Jaclyn, I love talking to you. You're
Me
fabulous.
too. The feeling is completely mutual. I
Ah,
could talk to you all day.
I know, but I know you have an evening to get back to. And I am, again, super grateful that you took the time. And I love the safari. I'm so excited for it to come out and other people to read it. Where, if somebody wants to get it once it comes out, where should they go to find you? Where should they go to find Safari, the chateau, the main character, all of your work?
So I'm at jaclyngoldis.com, um, at Jaclyn Goldis on Instagram, and they can buy the book. They can pre-order the Safari everywhere books are sold, and it will be out in stores and on Kindle and everything on May 20th.
Super exciting. I love, love, love it. And really, honestly, it's just so much fun to read. And that's the thing about it is that regardless of what's happening in the book, I'm having a good time reading it, even if there's some darker elements to it. It's still really fun to read. And you're walking a beautifully fine line there and you're doing it really well. So I'm grateful for that too.
Oh, well, thank you. That's truly the best compliment I could hear. So thank you.
Yay, super fun. All right. So you might remember that this is the last question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. And you might remember your answer from last time. You might not, doesn't matter. But here it is. If you had an airplane, environmentally friendly, of course, that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Hmm. Hmm. I think I would say it's going to be a great day because it's really what I say to myself every morning,
Mm,
and I try to kind of our um hopping onto our conversation about being in the present moment. Like I think sometimes when I'm getting a little frazzled in the day or I'm like scrolling Instagram too much, it's
mm.
coming back to myself of like today is my day. It's going to be a great day. Um, I try to do that a few times in the day, and I think yeah, it's feeling into my present moment of like it's a great moment, it's a great day. Um, I don't know, that is what comes to me.
And I love that. I think that's great because there is again a presence there. There's a being present there that is so important, but it's also there is sort of it's setting the expectation for yourself that
Yeah,
that is going to happen. I do this thing periodically on social media where I say, okay, today is everything will go right day. So I
yeah.
choose a random Friday and a bunch of people join in and we are all going today everything will go right Friday, and that's what we do. And everything, and people have told me how often their expectation of everything will go right today actually makes everything go right that day. It's
I
really
love
lovely.
that. Totally.
So
I love that.
yeah, it's really fascinating to me to be in a situation where we shape our own reality and to get those little lessons that we actually do in many ways shape our own reality. So I I love that.
Yeah. I do too. I'm gonna have to hop on to that Friday.
Oh, I'll put you on the
Right.
chain when we do that.
Perfect.
Because
Perfect.
it's really lovely actually. It makes for a really beautiful uh moment in time, and people are doing it on their own. I get these periodic messages. I did everything will go right Tuesday and it worked.
Oh,
Great.
I love that.
So yay, yeah. I'm in the middle of writing a book about that very thing because I think that shaping of our own reality in that way is really potentially powerful for many of us. Anyway, again, Jaclyn, I am thrilled to have you on the show. I cannot thank you enough for being here, and I can't wait for the next book. But I'm very lucky in that I'm getting to read the Safari before it actually comes out. But if you're listening to this, you need to go get the Safari. I'm telling you now, it is such a fun read. It's not a joyful book in that it is a thriller, a murder mystery, but it is really fun and engrossing. And if you happen to have been to South Africa or love South Africa, you're going to love this book because there's a lot of nice little Easter eggs right in the middle of it. Like, see, Jaclyn, the thing is, if somebody's listening to this, I talk about my love for Amarula a lot. Because, you know, there is somewhere a vegan, I haven't had it for a long time because I've been vegan for a long time and it's not vegan, but there is apparently in England you can get vegan Amarula. So I'm like, I need to go to England and get me
Oh
some
my
bottles
gosh,
and bring them home
yes.
because
Wow, I love
there's it's so good, it's ridiculous. Anyway,
that.
thank Thank you again, Jaclyn, for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love our conversations as always, and it's
Ah,
been wonderful to chat with you.
likewise. Yay. So you heard it here first, last, and always. Go get the Safari, read it. And while you're at it, get the main character in the chateau as well. They're really fun reads. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Your Creative Mind podcast, reminding you as always to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2025. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.